Well, this is Steve Ridgel, and my good friend Ken Jones went to be with Jesus a couple of days ago. Now, some of you may have heard me talk about Ken because he's part of a lot of the seminars I do. Now, when I talk about using stories to talk about Jesus, one of my stories is the conversion of Jimmy Moreno, and Ken was right in the middle of that, inspirational in that. Ken will tell you when Jimmy and Janie lost their adult son, they didn't know what to do except call Ken, and he showed up and he said, I didn't know what to do except pray. And then he connected them with me, and then he taught them, and Jimmy eventually became a Christian. It's a great story. Ken did that. He was a great evangelist. But in my Followers Making Followers seminar, I also talk about Ken, and I say he was a great sinner who became a great evangelist. Ken always said that. Ken kind of described his life journey to me one time like this. I became a Christian very early in life as a young teenager. And he said, I fell away fairly quickly, but I married a good woman. She stayed faithful, stayed with me. And he said, I was away a long, long time. Chased all the wrong things, did all the wrong things, lived a life away from Jesus, would talk openly about his struggles with alcohol. But later in life, came back to the Lord, got it right this time, understood it, was passionate about Jesus. And so there's some snapshots about Ken that I just thought I'd share with you because one is they'll help you be a little closer to Jesus. Two is it's a little bit of a reminder to all of us that God uses everybody. You know, Ken's not the kind of guy you would have picked to lead any kind of ministry. He was rough around the edges, talked rough, didn't hide his past, talked about his struggles. But there are a couple of very vivid snapshots about Ken I want to share with you. One of them is I remember the night Ken came into an elders meeting. Now, this is when we were both over at Southern Hills, before we were both at Hillcrest. We were over at Southern Hills, and he came into an elders meeting one night, and I still remember Ken saying, I've got a dream. And here's in a nutshell what Ken said. He said, you know what? Most of you guys probably know I'm an alcoholic. And he said, I've been sober for a long time. But he said, I think there are people that won't come into our church if they're alcoholics. We don't look like them. They won't feel welcome. He said, I think we take Jesus to them. And you know what Ken's dream was? It was to do church in a bar. Now, full credit to the guys that were elders at Southern Hills then. Wow. Well, they stepped right up and said, you know what? Yeah, pray about that. Come back and talk to us. And he did. Boy, Ken went and prayed about it. He was talking about it to someone who happened to have a connection at a bar whose owner said, yes, you can do church in a bar. Long story short, it didn't come out exactly like Ken had dreamed, but they started church in a bar. Now, I want to tell you why that matters to me, because what we're doing at Hillcrest, reaching people on the fringes, a whole lot of that came from, well, the vision Ken had. Now, we didn't start a church for people like that. We thought we ought to bring them into ours, and so we just went out and started bringing people in. But I was always struck by Ken's statement, I'm not sure they'd feel welcome. And so why? And what does that mean? And it's really, we've done a lot reaching people that I think, you know what, that came from Ken Jones' dream. The other vivid picture I have of Ken is leading praise. Southern Hills had a praise team that stood up on the stage. And Ken would often sing, even when his physical body began to deteriorate, where he had to have help standing and getting up there. But he had a big, deep bass voice, and Ken Jones loved to praise Jesus. And I tell you why he did that. Because he would say, Jesus has been so good to me. Well, of course, in later years, it sometimes happened. They came over to Hillcrest, and I used to sit sometimes close and get to watch him sing praises. But as he got where he couldn't get out much, and his body began to betray him, and Ken's mind began to be not as focused as it was, and then he just slid off where he couldn't quite remember things or couldn't quite get things right. But Ken went home, and I think a whole lot about how he's enjoying heaven and that big bass voice of singing praises. And Ken, I thank you for your encouragement and your inspiration about reaching people on the margins, because you were once there. I was once there. All of us, to be truthful, were sometimes on the margins. And guys like Ken help bring everybody home. So thanks, Ken, and I will see you forever, and we'll all sing for a long, long time in heaven.